Yes, sir. First of all, thank you for having me here, giving me this opportunity to come before you and share my thoughts about startups and the overall CA practice, and to have an opportunity to interact with you all. Now, coming to your question, why startup consulting and why do I practice in this area? So, I'll just take a moment to briefly introduce myself, which would help me to answer the questions that I have asked, that you have asked to me. So, before starting my own consulting practice, I was working with a consulting firm called EY, Ernst& Young, in their Mumbai office, where I mainly used to work in tax and regulatory laws. So, international taxation, transfer pricing, litigations, and foreign exchange law, FEMA, and all those matters is the area that I definitely work, and my core areas of expertise. But when I left my job at EY and started my practice, so I can tell this fact that the first initial 20 clients that I got, all of them were the people who were about to start their startup journey, as in those who were about to start their entrepreneurship journey, and they did not have any clue how to go about it. Because what happens that in most of the time, people who are starting any startup, they come from a non-finance, non-business backgrounds. They are engineering graduate or medical people and other people. So for them, it is very much difficult for them to understand that how to convert this idea into a proper business, which is properly legally registered, which is using the best of the best strategies to get into the market. So there are several aspects where they need guidance, and that is where I realized that okay, startup community is the next big thing that I, as a chartered accountant, can aim for. And that is where I started consciously upgrading myself and interacting with the people who are into startup community as much as possible. Now it has been almost a good 1 year now that I have been very much part of startup community, member of several startup forums, and interacting to a good number of entrepreneurs on day-to-day basis, helping them to solve their basic queries. So that's a basic. So my core areas of expertise, I can say now, definitely tax and regulatory laws, but add on to that is startup consulting and almost all the aspects of startup consulting, whether it is legal or professional service or fundraising or any other aspects of startups.
We are organizing these types of seminars
Yes.
mainly to induce our young members to practice in new areas of practice. Startup being as described by our learned speaker,
Mm-hmm.
clients' requirements made him to practice in startups. Uh,
Right.
uh, uh,
Okay. So
I
I
can
would definitely.
yeah, sir. And
Right.
now I request our CP chairman to introduce our speaker. Balaji sir.
Yes, sir, I'm online, sir. Just. Good evening, sir. Thank you for having given me a chance to introduce a young and dynamic speaker. C.A. Hardik Dev is a chartered accountant, company secretary, and also a commerce graduate from Mumbai University. He's a founder and CEO of BLFT Advisors, an all-round advisory firm for business, law, finance, and taxation services. Hardik is having specialization in startup consulting and tax and regulatory laws. Prior to starting consulting practice, he has worked with Ernst& Young LLP in India and Baker Tilly International for around 5 years. These viewers, I introduce the speaker to the audience. Thank you. Now over to speaker.
thank you, sir. Thank you, Balaji, sir, for such a warm invitation and introduction to me. I hope that we can start with the session, and I would definitely answer the questions that you asked earlier. That what are the new practice areas and practice opportunities for chartered accountants with startup clients? But I don't want to answer these questions at the beginning of the session, because there is too much to learn about and understand about the startup first, and definitely that is the main important question that I would be addressing, but at the end, not at the beginning. So, with your permission, sir, I would like to start my session and start sharing the screen, if you allow me, sir.
Please, sir. We can start, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is the basic table index, I can say, for all the discussions that we would be doing today about all the aspects of startups. But before we move to discuss any single topic about the startup, what I really want to understand is your understanding of what is startup and what is anything as in a normal business, right? So I would request all the participants to start posting your queries, your answers in the chat box. That how do you differentiate between a normal business and a startup? As in, okay, whenever a client is coming to you, how would you evaluate and decide that okay, it's a startup client or it's my normal client? So chat box is open to you. Please give me some basic answers, how you understand and how you differentiate between a normal startup client and the business client. Can we have any answers from the participants, please?
Sir,
But you can proceed whatever you wish, sir. Just you can start from this table of content itself.
Okay, okay, perfect. So we do have one answer which says that first time entrepreneurs are startups. I can definitely say yes, but there is a difference, a slightly a basic difference is that even a businessman could be a first time businessman, as in it could be a routine business when the founders are doing it for the first time. So the key criteria to differentiate whether a business which is coming to you is a startup or just another routine business, I could say the most decisive factor would be the quantum, the quality of innovations which is involved in their business model. So if it is a normal business, for example, say I am trading into textile without use of any technology or without any new process or new product, then there is no innovation involved when there is no technology involved as such. I can't say it's a startup client, even if they are doing it for the first time or they're experienced. But if there is a new business model which has emerged due to new practices or new processes, that would make it a startup. So just to give you a brief examples of the popular startups which are there. So number one is definitely, say, we all know, say, Ola. So car driving services were there. It has been there since a long time. But what was new for Ola is that tech-based cab sharing platform, cab riding platform, those services were not available. Same goes for Oyo, that the booking hotels through a mobile application was not available earlier. Or we can take example of any startup which is there. For example, say Byju. So Byju, the education sector was always there. There are good coaching academies, but what differentiate Byju's from the other coaching institutes is the technology that they use, the new learning methods, new learning approaches that they used, and that is what makes them a startup. So, first and the most important thing that we need to understand here as a chartered accountant, that whenever a client is coming to you, you would need to take a call whether it's my other just other regular business client or it's a startup, and for that, try to understand their business model very carefully. That what is their business model, what is the new thing that they are doing, what is the kind of innovation, patent, copyright, what is the technology that they are using, and that is something that would help us to evaluate whether we should take into the directions of a startup business or just another business, right? So if it's just another business, a routine traditional business, then we don't even need to think about all the startup related benefit that the government is providing, or registering a startup with anywhere, the IPP, because those aspects would not at all be relevant. But if that is not the case and it is some innovative business, then definitely we would need to think about now how we can help the startup client grow. So with that, with this particular slide, the basic takeaway that we have to take from here is that startup, for the general understanding, I can say, is an innovative or tech-based business. We do have some two additional answers, that a business with new concept of creativity, generating employment and wealth. That is, I can say, the most perfect answer that we would be coming up and discussing when we discuss about the legal definition of a startup. And then we have an answer from Niranjan sir that startups are with a lot of risk than the existing one. Again, 100%, because when we are trying up new things, definitely there is a risk which is involved. There is an inherent risk because those business models are not tested before. right? If I'm starting a regular business, those business models are tested. We can see hundreds of example around us. But I'm coming up with a new business model. It involves a risk because investors would not be that comfortable to invest in you because that business model is not tested before. Even employees would not be sure whether to join you or not because there is a fact that 90% of the startup fails. So what if he fails after 6 months? They would again be without any job. So the entire community of all the stakeholders would see you as with some doubtful eyes that whether you would be succeeding or not, and that is why startups are considered to be very very risky. But of course risk comes with a reward. If the startup is successful, then we all know how successful it is, right? So having first understood about what a startup is, the second important aspect that we need to understand is what are the development phase of startups. As in, what would be a business life cycle for any startup, and why it is important to understand because requirement of any startups in terms of whether it is the requirement for the say strategies or the kind of funds that they would be requiring, the other legal application and all. So everything would depend upon what stage the startup is. If it is just an ideation where you don't have a product in the market, or if they are just at just launched and then they are about to get some initial tractions, accordingly the business consulting would be varying. Accordingly, the legal requirement or whatever legal opinion that you give to them, that would also vary. So it all depends, and it on the stage where the startup is, and that is why it is very important for us to understand how the startup community would be describing their startups. When you talk to an entrepreneur who is very much into startup community, they would be saying that I have an ideation stage startup. Now what does that mean? Or they would say, okay, I have some early validation in my startup. So what does that mean? So these are the terms that we need to understand. And for that I can say that four stages we can definitely divide any startup. Number one is early traction. When I say, sorry, the number one is ideation. And what does that mean? Ideation means that when you are working on an idea, for example, say I am working on a mobile application based idea, which would help connect doctors with patients, right? So if that is a platform, I'm just taking example of Practo, I know, but let's assume that I am the founder of Practo and I'm working on that application, and the application is yet to be launched. I'm just working on the idea, working on making that product. Then I can say that my startup is still at the ideation phase, as in it is just an idea, nothing on the ground, right? So that is the first stage of any startup, describing any startup. So whenever there is an entrepreneur coming to you and saying that I am working on an ideation stage startup, it means that he's still to yet to launch the product or service that he would be coming up. He's just doing the back end work, the homework that he's supposed to do. So that is the best time where he would be seeking your help for all the legal registrations, all the business consulting service that you can provide to them, and that is how which would create new opportunities for you, and accordingly you can consult them. So the first stage was early traction. Second is validation. That sorry, the first one was ideation and second is validation. So okay, then that the application that I was talking about, that Practo, I developed that application, I launched to the users, and I have some roughly around say 50 doctors on the application and around 500 patients who are using it. So and that is how I'm testing or validating my idea, that whether it would work or not. I am having a very limited users for now. I can say that the startup, my startup is at the validation phase, that whatever idea that I had, I converted that idea into a minimum viable product, as in a basic product, a first prototype of this platform. I launched to that, and now I'm trying to validate whether it would be working, whatever solution that I'm providing would be working or not. That is the second stage, how we describe startups. Number three is early tractions. That okay, you launched a basic prototype. After very initial users, as in the first 100 or 500 users, now you are getting good numbers. So as in, that is the growth phase of any startup. When you have commercially launched the startup in the market, you are getting good number of traction, and that is when we would be saying that the startup is having early traction. And the last one is growth stage. That okay, now all the big unicorns that we know around us, whether it is Paytm or Byju's or Ola, Oyo, they are no more a startup as such because they have become full-fledged corporate houses now, and we can say they are growth stage startups. So four phases. The first one was ideation, second is validation, third is early traction or scaling, I can say, and fourth one is growth. Now, once we think of having a practice in this particular field, as in to serving the startup client, we need to become a part of the startup community. And to become part of startup community, it is very much important that we understand that what are the terms, as in how the startup people talk, right? For example, if you have to talk deal with the people who are from technology background, you should have basic knowledge about the terms and the jargons that they would be using. Or in a ca group of ca people, we should be knowing basic terms that uh, the ca people that usually use. In the same way, startup community is completely a different community, I can say, which has their own terms, their own jargons to describe themselves. And there are the few basic things that I have just put on the slide that every consultant who aspire to serve a startup client should be knowing to have a healthy discussions with the potential client, potential entrepreneur, right? So the first term was startup, which we have already talked about, that what is a business versus a startup. Now, the second thing is entrepreneur. So a person who is starting a startup, the founder of that startup is called to be an entrepreneur, as in someone who's taking the risk and starting the business is called entrepreneurs. Now, entrepreneurs has some derived word, as in several derived word which are derived from the main word entrepreneurship. So entrepreneurship, the main word is entrepreneur, the person who's founding that startup. Then several other terms like say solopreneur, when there is one single person, like professionals like us who are starting a startup, we can be described very much as a solopreneur. Or the most commonly used term is entrepreneur. So someone who want to start a startup is described as entrepreneur. So most of the time it would happen when you are attending an event of startup people. They would say that I don't have any startup idea as of now, but I'm a entrepreneur, which means essentially that they would be starting a startup at some later phase of their life. Now, the next two most important terms that everybody should be knowing is minimum viable product and the product market fit. These are the very important terms that everybody would be using, and specifically when you are helping the startups with fundraising services or any financial services, when you are dealing with the startups and the startup investors, this is the term that they very commonly use, that do you have mvp, do you have pmf. So what are these terms? Minimum viable product. So what happens that when you are launching yourself in the market, let's talk about Practo again. So when you develop the application, so the features that the platform had when it was launched for the first time, that was a very minimum platform, as in a platform with very limited features. And over the period, once the basic prototype is working, we would definitely be gradually upgrading our application, upgrading our platform to add on the other features as well, right? So what is the first thing which is required? The minimum platform or minimum business model or minimum application features which are required to get going into the market. So if you're working on the idea now to start the business, you need at least that, okay, I would need this startup. For example, say you're starting a platform like Zomato, which would be connecting with where someone can order food. So if you want to start that startup, you would need an application where all the restaurants would be listed, all the food items that they deliver would be listed, and a customer who wants to order something would have an option to buy, go to that, browse through the restaurant, their dishes, and make the payment order, right? So now these are the basic features which is needed if you want to start and go into the market. So the first prototype which would be needed is called minimum viable product. That the product with minimum features, so that you don't have to invest so heavily on the first prototype, which would of course be coming from your own savings or from your family income and all. So the first minimum features which are required, but at the same time it should be viable also, as in it should have all the features which are expected by the consumers. So talking about say the Zomato again. So the first version might not be with all the features like rating the delivery boy, or those are all ancillary features, but it should at least have restaurants listed on it, and making the order, and as in booking the order and making the payment, tracking the deliveries. These are the basic features which are required. So if these are the features available, then we can say we have the minimum product. But if I miss one of the important features from them, say for example, I don't have the restaurants listed on my platform, whether that minimum product would be viable, answer is no, because without that features, the business model would not work. So the MVP has to be something which has the limited features which can go into the market, and at the same time it has to be a viable product, that so at least all the basic features which are expected by your potential user should be having and should be there in your solutions. Now, why it is important? Because most of the time, as a business consultant, if you are consulting an entrepreneur, he would be asking that, okay, this is what I am thinking to start, and they would be mixing in a way their vision for the, as in their goals for the 5-10 years long term, right? So as in the 5 years time I want to reach there, but what is the first step that you need to take today? There is no clarity on that. So you can help them to build their MVP, that okay, if you want to come up with say a social media platform like Facebook, definitely on the day one you can't build a platform like Facebook, right? Or say there is an talk going around in India now that we would be building something similar to Google Play Store, right? So on the day one we can't have any platform which would be exactly competing with the Google Play Store with all the features. That is not possible. So what is the first step which is needed to go? So that first step which could be launched is called minimum viable product. Over the period, that MVP would be upgraded to product market fit. So whereas the MVP was the first prototype, PMF is the stage where you wanted to reach. For example, you wanted to launch an application like Zomato, but that was not possible on the day one. So on the day one, you built an MVP. On the day when you have added all the features gradually, it would become a product market fit, as in the solution that you were aiming to deliver to your clients, to your customer. That is called product market fit. Any product which is fit for the market, what you wanted to deliver and what is required by the market, when both the things are included in your solution, it is called to be a product market fit. So I can say any startup journey is simply going from minimum viable product to reaching to the product market fit, and starting small, becoming big. This is how startup journey is usually described, and this is important from business consulting point of view. These things might sound very basic, but trust me, these are all high value work where you could charge good amounts to your startup client also, and you can help several way with your uh, as in very good advices that how they should plan going into the market. Stages of startups, we have already talked about four stages were there. As in the first one was, if you can help me, what were the four start stages that we have talked about? I would just want to have some answers from you. Can we expect some answers, or we should go ahead?
Queries we can post to in the chat box also.
Yeah. So, four stages of startups.
Sir, other than these three examples, Ola, Oyo, Byju's, is there any
Right.
other examples in regular business? I came to know that one person registered this solar power plant under startup
Okay.
with a different concept, and
Mhm.
somebody is coming to register a textile production
Mhm.
like organic textile like that under
Right.
this concept. Whether
Mhm.
these are possible, how to bring
Yes,
it
yes.
into startups?
Yes, we would definitely, as in these are very much possible to be defined as startups and getting all the startup registration which is required. And we would be covering these aspects in the next slide also. And what is the most important thing which is required is having an innovative business model. So if you are coming up, say, having a textile business is very regular, but if you are working in, say, organic textile, that is something new which is not there, and that could very much be included in the definition of startup. So four stages that we just talked about. The first one was ideation. I'm just posting in the chat box. Second one was validation. Third was early traction. And the fourth one was growth. These are the four stages. That is how we usually describe and divide the startups at different stages. So if today I'm starting to work on a new startup, it would be an ideation stage. If you have already ready, MVP is already ready, then I can say it's at the phase of validations where I have launched the MVP with a limited, on a pilot basis, I can say, and that is in the validation phase. After I commercially launch, it would be an early traction startup, and once it grows and become very big, I can say it's a growth stage startup. Now, coming back to our discussion, that what apart from stages of startup is important for us to understand is two important things is startup incubation centers and startup acceleration programs, because these are the things that an entrepreneur is usually looking at. He is definitely looking to find an incubation center which can help him to get his startup incubated, or he's definitely looking for an acceleration program where he can potentially meet his potential investors, which would be investing in his startup, and he can go to he can scale his startup operations, right? So how do we differentiate, and what exactly incubation center and acceleration program is? So incubation center, I can say that when you plan to start working on any startup, which as in when it is an ideation phase. For example, let's assume there is an engineering guy who wants to build a mobile application, or he wants to start, say, electric vehicle startups, right? So now how to work on that idea? He has thoughts in his mind, but how to go about it? So as in how he would be getting access to the business people, mentors, and all the right network which is required for building a startup. So incubation center usually helps in that process. As an incubation center they are usually tied to colleges, where college would be organizing different activities, inviting startup speakers to talk about different aspects about it, or inviting investors to conduct mock fundraising events and all. So that is how we get an overall idea, as in the founders usually get overall idea of the other aspects of business which is not known to them. For example, if there is a person who wants to start on EVs, he definitely knows about the EV aspect, how to build electronic vehicles, but what he don't know is about the other aspects, so that he can, and for that reason he can access incubation centers, where he would be getting access to all the startup community, the entire startup community. And why it is important? Number one, that right network is the most important. Number two, there is a high chance of getting an investor from the incubation center itself. Number three, incubation center helps us to refine the business model over the period, how we can work on the revenue model, how we can make, say, financial projections on how what else we can do for marketing. All the other important aspects is something that is taken care and helped and worked during the period of incubation. And at the end, we do get, as in most of the incubation center do provide seed grant. So for example, say 10 lakhs rupees or 20 lakhs rupees they would be providing to work on the first product, first prototype, which could be launched in the market. So that is how startup incubation centers are important, and all the young entrepreneurs usually are looking for it. Second is acceleration program. Almost, I can say, similar role that the startup incubation center plays, but the only difference is the stage at which they are involved. So whereas the incubation center is generally useful at the time of ideation, when you don't have a product itself, acceleration program are useful when you have launched into the market, you have good number of users with you, your potential clients, and now you're starting to scale your operations. So at that time you would be needing guidance how to scale your operations. At that time you would be needing funding. So acceleration program would be helping you to accelerate and scale your operations. And these are the two most common things which are usually talked about in the startup community. Apart from it, the most important thing that we hear and read in news almost on daily basis is funding round. That there is seed funding or pre-seed funding, then series A, B, C, D, angel investors, venture capital. What is that? That if somebody is raising fund, if just at the ideation phase, we call it pre-seed funding. As in, I have not launched the market, launch my product into the market. I'm working on the idea, and to build that MVP that I just talked about, if I'm raising fund, or pre-launch stage funding is called as pre-seed funding. When your idea, as in your startup, is just a seed. At that time, if you're raising any fund, it's a pre-seed. Once you have the MVP ready, and the first round that you would be raising, usually through an angel investor, is called seed funding. When you have the seed ready, you are good to launch into the market on the prototype basis, on the pilot basis. Whatever fund that you are raising at that time, it is generally described as seed funding. And seed funding is usually received from angel investors. So angel investors are the people uh, who are active into the startup community, who are investing into startups on a regular basis, and those who comes with a combination of both the things, as in they are not just investors, but they also help you as advisor also. So as in most of the time, the people who are from business background, successful entrepreneurs, they turns to the angel investors, helping the budding entrepreneurs to build their startup. In the return of that, they would be taking extra equity from you, because they would be not just an investor but advisor also. And after the seed funding, the next round that we raise is over the period. It is usually described as series A, B, C, as in starting from A. The number of rounds that you raise, it is called series A, B, C, D, and there it could be either from the existing investor that you have on board, or it could be a new investor coming in. Usually, venture capital firms is something someone who invests in series A, B, C rounds. And the next general term that we are discussing is business plan and pitch deck. So what happens that today, if I'm working on an idea, for example, say let's take the same example that I want to build a solar system based startup, and I want to raise a pre-seed round for it so that I can work on that solutions. So how do I convey my idea to the other people and convince them that okay, this is a project which can definitely help you, um, as in it could be a good investment opportunity for you, right? So for that we make a presentation, and that presentation is called pitch deck, and that pitch deck would cover all the important aspects of any startup, as in starting from number one, what is the problem that you are trying to solve. As in, for example, say Zomato is pitching, for example, say Zomato wants to pitch their potential investors, they would say that it is not very easy to deliver, as in to book, as in to place order for home delivery of food. And that is the problem that they are targeting. So define the problem is number one thing. Number two, solution, that how you are solving that problem. Number three, talk about your product, talk about your service, what exactly is your solution. Number four, what are the market opportunities, how big the market is, how much your target share could be, and then who are the competitors, how you are different from them. Talk about all these marketing related aspects. Then go to the financial model, the revenue numbers, how you would be earning, what are the sources, how much you can earn from it, making financial projections. At the end, talking about the teams. So that pitch deck, that presentation would help the potential investors to get an overall understanding of what the idea exactly is, and that is why it is the most important document to be made. There are good number of consulting firms which professionally help the startups to make good looking and well presented pitch deck, and they charge a good amount for it. And at the same time, pitch deck comes with a combination of business plan. So whereas the pitch deck is just a summary of overall things, business plan is something where a detailed overview of all the things, right? For example, say when I say that this is my product, so what exact detail are there? Or when I talk about marketing, so how I would be marketing my product, financial projections, all those details are given in the business plan document. And there are good number of chartered accountants and people usually from the finance background who are working as a startup consultant, and then we provide services like we would help you to make your financial projection, we would help you to make a business plan, and we would give you a pitch deck presentation which you can use to show your potential investors. So that is one of the area of startup consulting where a good number of people are already working, including me. So these were the basic terms that we had to keep in mind even before we talk of anything about the startup community. So is there anything else that you want me to cover here? Any term that you might have encountered during your experience so far? And something that we can discuss before going into the details about the DIPP benefits and all.
One of our members' query is regarding valuation. How the
Valuation.
angel
Mhm.
investors or potential investors will value these projects, sir?
Perfect. We would be definitely covering to that aspect. Just 1 minute. I need to get my laptop charger. I'll be back. In the meantime, you can post your queries, all the participants. Just 10 seconds.
We can post queries in the chat box, or we can unmute and ask our speakers.
Targets that we should be knowing. Definitely, I'll be covering the how to do valuations and all the other aspects. And that is exactly what you were asking me in the beginning, that what are the business opportunities available with startup clients. So I can divide the business opportunities which are available in four categories. Number one is business consulting, second is legal services, number three is financial services, and fourth one is taxation services. So if you have noticed the name of my consulting firm in the beginning, the name was BLFT, and B stands for business, L stands for legal, F for finance, and T for taxation. So these are the areas that any potential startup consultant can work and aim to solve the problems of the startups, right? And now, what exact opportunities? So first, talking about business consulting, that how we can help as a chartered accountant to the potential startup entrepreneurs with business consulting. So the first thing that they would be requiring is making a business model, how their business would exactly be working, how it would be creating values, what would be the process flow. And this is something which requires expertise. This is something which requires business acumen, which we can definitely help them. Number two that I talked about is making business plan reports, pitch deck, and then strategic consulting of all the aspects of business. Second is legal registrations, legal services. So it includes right from say basic entity registration, company LLP registration. Second, getting all the regulatory approvals which are required. For example, if it is in the fintech sector, it might require approval of the RBI. If it is into food sector, it might require approval of FSSAI, right? So all the applicable legal registrations, initial company registrations, intellectual property rights related registrations, and then startup registrations. These are the areas. And then, of course, the retainership services, regular compliance services that we can provide to them. Then coming to the financial service sector, making it starts with making financial projections. Second, fundraising. Number three, startup valuation that we would be covering definitely. And number fourth is financial management, the regular accounting functions. Because most of the startups can't afford to have a chartered accountant or an accounting team in the beginning. It is more likely that the function would be outsourced to someone, and where this is where we get an opportunity to serve them. And the fourth one is taxation related service, helping them with income tax matter, helping them with GST related matters, and all the other legal compliances which are required. So this is how we divide the business opportunities, how we can serve them. So either with business consulting, legal services, professional services, taxation related services, or financial services. Now, talking about startups, what exactly startup is, and how do we register a startup, how do we claim the benefit of all the startups, startup registration, which is usually it is called, right? So for that, the first thing that we need to understand here, that there is a basic difference between startup registration and startup recognitions. The screenshot that you are seeing on your screen, startupindia.gov.in, it is the official portal of the government of India for startups. So Startup India scheme, if you have heard about it, and this is the official portal of it. So now coming to the point, that what is the difference between startup registration and startup recognitions. So when I create an account on this platform, startupindia.gov.in, it's just like I go to this platform, I create an account in my business name, whether it is a startup, whether it is a business, or whether you are a consultant, it could be anything. Anybody can create an account. So when I create an account on this platform, nobody is checking your profile. Nobody is evaluating whether you are doing an innovative business model or what exactly it is. And that is the basic registration on this portal is often regarded as startup registration. So if somebody says that startup registration, it means creating an account on this platform. And why it is important? Because just by creating an account on this platform, any startup can get access to the free resources of all offered by the government for the startups. So if you see, this is the second tab, resources, right? So a good number of learning courses are there by Upgrade, and by other several courses are there. All the templates that you usually require for say co-founder agreement or NDA or any term sheets, and all the agreements, the templates of it are available here. And other free resources, you can network with people, as if you want to find a mentor, if you want to find an investor, if you investors are less likely to be find here, but if you want to say meet some startup consultant, it's more like a social media platform for the startup community. You can definitely go through their profile. If you like their profile, other startup community members, then you can send them a request. Then you can send message to each other. You can just get connected. And these are the free resources which are available. Apart from it, the government organizes several startup competitions and all from the time to time. Or if any incubation center, anybody organizing any event for the startup, they can get the events hosted on this platform and anybody can participate. So as in, just by creating an account on this platform, they would be able to participate in the event on the startup competition, the one like you are seeing on the screen, virtual incubation program for women entrepreneurs. So these are the basic benefits which are available just by creating the account, which is said to be startup registration. But when it comes to the advanced level of benefit, the next stage of benefit that the government provide, like tax exemptions and like trademark relaxations and all those benefits which we will be discussing, that is not available just by creating the account. So what would happen that once we create the account, we log into the portal, then there would be an option for DIPP registrations. So as DIPP is the government body under the Ministry of Commerce, which evaluate the startup application and give them registration as startup. And then they would decide whether your business is a startup or no. If yes, then you are eligible for all the benefits. If no, then you are not eligible. So the next question would come that what exact benefit is available. So benefits for registration we have already talked about, like free resources, networking opportunities, and participating in startup competitions versus but just by creating the account, just by registering on the Startup India portal, you do not get any tax exemptions or any legal benefit as such. So for that, what we require is DPIIT recognitions, which is usually described as startup recognition application, right? What is DPIIT? So it is Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, Government of India. It is, as in I can say, it's the government body which would be evaluating the startup related applications. Now, the next and the most important question which comes is who is eligible for DPIIT recognition? As does that mean, as in, is it the case that anybody who's creating an account would get benefits, all the benefits of tax exemptions and other benefits? Answer is no. Only the eligible startups which have been given recognition by DPIIT would be getting this benefit. So, what are the criterias for that? Criteria there are in total 5 criterias I can say that in order that your company get DPIIT recognitions, you need to fulfill these 5 criterias. Number one, that and the most fundamental thing is that only any business entity could be considered as startup only for a maximum period of 10 years. As in, if you are incorporating your company today, it could be regarded as a startup only for a period of 10 years. As in, whatever benefits which are available to a startup from the government side, it is available for a maximum period of 10 years. After the 10 year, in the 11th year of your incorporation, you are no longer a startup. Government doesn't consider you as a startup. So that is the first thing to keep in mind. Maximum 10 years for startup benefit. Number two, that what kind of entity is eligible, that in order to get registered recognized as startup, there are 3 options. Either you could be a private limited company, or you could be a limited liability partnership, or you could be a registered partnership firm. And when I say registered partnership firm, means a firm registered under the Partnership Act of 1932. So sole proprietorship concerns are not eligible to be recognized as startup. Number two, unregistered partnership firm is not eligible to be recognized as startup. And these are the most important things. So, and I would come to the point why it is important to choose a correct legal entity type for a startup also. So the first thing to keep in mind here, that maximum 10 years of benefit. Number two, that it has to be either a private limited company or LLP or a registered partnership firm. But again, I would go on to say that only and only it is better that we have a private limited company or LLP, because registered partnership firm is eligible to be recognized as a startup, but it is not eligible to claim benefits of tax exemption, tax holiday, which is available under Section 80 IAC of the Act, which we will be covering at the end of the session. So the important point here is that no doubt the government at this stage on this slide, I'm saying that 3 entity types are possible: company, LLP, and registered partnership firm. But when it comes to tax exemptions, only 2: private limited company and LLP is eligible. So for that, I would say that these are the 2 best options. Let's not go for registering a partnership firm whenever it is a case of startup. Number three, that the turnover. So any business which is having turnover of more than 100 crores in any financial year cannot be considered to be a startup. You need to have the turnover below 100 crore rupees. Fourth is that it has to be an original entity, which means that a business you have started on your own. It's a business that you have started. It's a new business, and it is not like that you demerged the operations of an existing company, or there was some reconstruction, there was some splitting of the businesses, and then you got a new legal entity to have that business, to continue that business. And such businesses are not eligible to be considered as startup. It has to be something which started from zero, and which is aiming to claim the benefit of startups. And fifth, and the most important criteria which would help you decide, is whether your business is innovative and scalable. So when we say whether it is innovative, it means that it should have, as in the business that you are working for, the startup idea that you have should work towards development or improvement of any product or any process or any service. यानी कि whatever product that you are making or whatever service that you would be providing or whatever process that you are using, right? That has to be innovative, that has to be new or an upgraded version of it. So, going back to the example of, say, Zomato only, that booking home delivery of tiffin is not that new idea. It is very much possible. I can simply make a call to someone and say, please deliver my food to this address. So, this was possible. But what is new is having a mobile application, that whole ecosystem that they built around it. That was an innovative business model. And that is what makes them eligible for being defined as a startup. So, innovation is the first part. Second, scalability is also important. So either it could be an innovative business where there is a new process or an upgraded process, product, or service, or it can be any traditional business which offers huge scalable business model. And the scalability would help creation of wealth, creation of employment. So, as in, to take a very simple example, a practical case that I worked. So there is a job worker who makes clothes and garments and uniform related work that they do, right? As in, they have around 200 tailors who are helping the exporters of textile to make the garments. So as in, if I want to export, I can simply place an order with them to make, say, make 500 blazers for me, or make, say, so many uniforms for me. They would do the work, and then I'm eligible for all the, as in, I'll be exporting the product. So the question is whether the job worker is eligible for it. Answer is yes, and we did get benefit of it, because no doubt there is nothing new about that business. There is no innovation, but it offers scalability. That today we have around 200 tailors. Tomorrow, once we get new orders, it would be 500,000, and then we are giving employment to the people who are not that literate, to the people who are, I can say, from the underprivileged class of society, and that is how we are helping the society. So, in any way, if your business is scalable and it is helping to create a creation of employment on a large scale, it is eligible to be defined as startup. So, five important things for the definition criteria of any startup, which makes it eligible for DPIIT recognitions. Number one is that it has to be a private limited company, LLP, or a registered partnership firm. Maximum 10 years of benefit. Number three, turnover should be less than 100 crore rupees. Fourth is it has to be a new business, original business. And fifth, and the most important, it has to be either into innovation or a scalable business model. Innovation, when there is a development or an improvement over existing product, process, or service, or versus scalability is when your business has the potential to generate large scale employment, specifically for the people who comes from the unorganized sector or underprivileged class of society. Then definitely you would be able to get benefit of startup. So now, yes. So there is a question from Siva sir, that what is startup registration? Is it separate registration? Where and what are the requirements? So this is something that we discussed just now, right? The DPIIT recognition. This is said to be the startup registrations. But again, not to confuse, I am saying that the two terms that we said, registration versus recognitions, be very careful about this, that creating just an account on Startup India portal is not recognitions. Once we create the account, there is a tab which comes around this, at this place, application for DPIIT recognitions. Once we make the application, we get the recognitions. That is called that is something which makes us eligible for all the benefits from the government. Now, coming to the main point, what are the benefits which are available if I get the DPIIT recognition? Because we already talked about the benefits that we get just by creating the account on it, on the portal. Now, after creating the account, we applied, we made an application, and we got the recognition. So, what are the benefits? So, there are total 9 laws which where as a recognized startup you can do self certification. So as in, these are labor laws, these are environmental laws. The most important one is payment of gratuity act, which is something we should be knowing of. Provident fund act, these are the two, and provident fund and ESIC act and payment of gratuity act, these are the three main labor law which I say that should be known to all. Apart from it, there are basic, as in the screen, it is apparent on the screen, the act which are there. So self-certification for a period of 3 years, as in no government officer would ever be visiting to your office to see and evaluate whether you are complying with the requirement or not. So three important is number one, payment of gratuity act, number three, provident fund, and number two, provident fund, and number three is ESIC. These are the three laws which should be known to all of us. Other are like contract labor and then construction related work. So those are all factory laws, or I can say the labor laws, which are not that common. That would be very specific for a manufacturing plant or construction company, usual case. So the first benefit startup is self-certification with total 9 laws, which includes 3 environmental laws and 6 labor laws for a period of 3 years. Now, second uh, benefit in terms of intellectual property right. So we would cover this point from here, that as a recognized startup, any business would usually be applying for 3 kind of intellectual property rights, right? Patent application, trademark application, and copyright. No specific benefit is being given to any startup for copyright application. So that point is going out of picture. Now coming back to the two most important part, patent application and trademark application. So a registered, when I say as a recognized startup is eligible for 50% of the fees for making trademark application. Also, a list of trademark facilitator, the people who can help you to get a trademark registration done, is hosted on the Startup India portal. So if you apply through them, their cost is reimbursed by the government. So for example, you are a consultant who is helping doing the business as a trademark facilitator. You can register yourself as a trademark facilitator on the Startup India portal, and whenever a client is coming to you, you get up to 10,000 rupees ka fees from the government, as in the government is bearing the cost for it. So, and if the legal fees that you need to pay on that, usually we need to pay 9,000 rupees per class. But for startups, the fees is 4,500 rupees per class, as in each class of trademark that you are applying for, there is 50% relaxations. So legal fees ka 50% concession is available, and the professional fees also being reimbursed and paid by the government up to 10,000 rupees. So that is the first benefit for trademark. Second, patent. So when it comes to patent, 80% rebate in filing cost, the legal fees of it. Again, patent facilitator ka database is available on the platform. And number three, and the most important, fast track examinations. So in the normal case where it takes around a year to get a patent registered, in the normal in case of a startup, the applications are usually processed in 3 to 6 months period. So it's in a way that if you're a startup, the government is helping you to with fast track examination of a patent application so that you can start your business very soon. So that is the second benefit I can say which is available to the startups, recognized startups. First one was self certification with labor law, environmental laws. Second is patent application and IPR protection related benefits in case of patent and trademark. Number three is income tax exemptions, that any startup can claim tax holiday for a period of 3 years out of 10 years. So Section 80 IAC is the number one benefit. And number two is angel tax exemptions. Number three, capital gain exemptions. So we will be covering these things in detail in the later slides. So not going into detail of tax exemption for now. Number four, that public procurement norm. So whenever the government is buying something from the private sector, they reserve a quota kind of for the startups, recognized startups. So you can actually be a supplier to the government, and this is how the government is helping you with the business side of it. And number five, in case your startup is not working and you want to wind up your company, you want to close your business, then fast track winding up of the company is also under the also provided under the insolvency and bankruptcy code. So five main benefits: self-certification, intellectual property right related. Number three is income tax exemptions, which we would be discussing in detail in the later slide. Number four, business support through reservations for startups and public procurement norms. And number fifth is easy winding up of the company in case of failure. Then, apart from it, there are several government schemes which are department specific, as in the ministries of government would be coming up from the time to time, where they would be helping you with seed grants. If you are into the technology sectors, the technology development program would help you with seed grant for building the product, or if you are into say Ayurvedic sector, they would be helping you in the initial seed funds efforts. In most of the cases, they would be helping you with the getting loan also. So there is a scheme called Stand Up India scheme where a startup can apply for loan. And now there was news some days back. There was an update on this that startup lending is now part of priority sector lending, which is required to be done by the banks, right? So overall benefit I have to classify. Number one is the five benefits that we talked about, as in legal benefits, tax exemptions, self certifications, and number two is helping with funds, seed funding, or helping you to get loan under different government schemes. So that is how recognized startups would be getting the benefits. Now, how to get these benefits, as in how one can apply for it. So go to create an account on Startup India portal is the step one. Number two, that after creating an account, make an application through that platform only for DPIIT recognition. It's completely online process without any application fee. Fill up the form, submit. They would be usually scrutinizing the form and replying within a week's time. And this is how, if they have further queries, you need to respond to them. If they don't have, you immediately get the registrations email to your account. You can also download it from there, from the portal. So that is the basic process. As a consultant, you can charge fees for doing it. Again, it would depend how much fees you can charge depending on the client ka requirement and client ka capacity. But it's again a good practice that someone can look for. So before we go to the next aspect of legal services for startups, if you have any questions related to this. Yeah, so the question was that how much time will it take for DIPP registration or rejections? They usually reply within a week's time. Most of the cases, as in there is an ideal standard that they would be replying to you within 72 hours. So 4 days, I can say, or within a week's time is they usually reply to you. Any other questions on this aspect?
Question, sir.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, sir.
Where it should start, either from private limited registration or Startup India website registration, sir?
It is from Startup India. As in the application for DIPP registration is to be made through Startup India registration. But the process for starting is that today, if I'm having an idea, what would be the step-by-step wise process? Number one, we need to set up the legal entity, right? Company registration or LLP registration. Once we get the registrations and once we have something working, because one of the important criteria to get startup registrations that you need to have things in place. There must be some work going on at the time of application. Not necessary that you have a complete platform, right? For example, I'm making Zomato, just to continue with the same example, then not necessary that I need to have a working application available on Play Stores and all, but there must be some work which is going on and you need to justify that how the work is being going on. So in that case, you can submit links to your website or you can submit a pitch deck showing progress that you have made so far, and that would help DIPP evaluate your application that okay, you're actually working on this. It is not just a basic idea.
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is there any time limit for applying for registration from the date of commencement?
No, sir, there is no time limit. It's a completely a beneficial registration. So whenever you are trying to, as in whenever you aim to claim the benefit, just before that you can make an application. If you don't want to make the application, then there is no loss.
Now, can we apply after 3 years from the date of commencement?
Yes, sir, we can definitely apply. Yes, yes.
Okay.
So any startup which was incorporated after 1/4/2016, as I'll be coming to that point when we talked about the tax exemptions. So the ATIAC benefits are limited to startups which are or to the companies which registered after 1/4/2016, 1st April 2016. So today, any company, even if they have not applied for tax benefits till for the startup registration till now, they can apply even today if they registered after April 2016. Now we have one question that did an existing business entering innovative business additionally currently it's proprietary, can it register as a private limited? The ideal answer would be that if you already have one company which is there in say last 10 years and now you're starting with a new company, you want to try a new innovative business model, then you should not in-house the activities of that innovative business under the existing company, right? And start it as a separate business from the day one, so that there would be no questions of that there was a reconstruction or splitting of the existing business, which is one of the main important, that whatever startup that you are trying to register, it has to be a new business. It should not be something that you derived from an existing business, and for that it is very important that you house it separately from the day one itself. It should not be part of any existing business. Can we move on to the next aspect of startups? Okay, go. So we had talked about registering and as in making an application for DIPP recognitions, right? But one of the main conditions there was that only a private limited company or limited liability partnership or a registered partnership firm, these three entity types only are eligible for the benefits. So the question would come that what is the most ideal legal entity types, whether we should register a company or LLP or a partnership firm. So, and that is one of the important questions that a client and potential entrepreneur would be asking you, because they always have this question in their mind that what is the difference and which one is the best one. So, to put it very simply, that registered partnership firms become out of the pictures for as an ideal entity type for any startup because it is not eligible for the tax benefit. So, we remains with two options: private limited company or limited liability partnership. Now, which one is better? So, both are at par when we talk about the government benefits. So, whatever benefits which is available for any startup, they are available for a private limited company also, and they are very much available to the LLP also. There is no differentiations from the government perspective. But the other important aspects come into pictures. For example, if you are planning to raise funds through an external investors, so no external investors, whether it is an angel investor or a VC firm, none of them would invest in a limited liability partnership. They do not invest in LLP at all. What they would ask you that first, if you are having an LLP, get it converted to a private limited company, and then only we would be coming into picture as a shareholder. We can't become partner with you. So in that case, the first important question that you need to ask to the startup entrepreneurs for whom you are registering the company, ask them that when are you aiming to raise funds, whether it is in the next 3 to 6 months or whether it would take time, say 2 3 years. Because what is the disadvantage of having a company is the compliance cost and the amount of compliance which is to be done. So if that is the only concern, then and if they are planning to raise funds in say next 1 year, then there is no point of having LLP for now and then moving on to private limited company, because that would become a costly matter. But if it is a plan like that, okay, I'm not looking to raise external funds for the next 3 to 5 years, then we can definitely have someone guide and advise them to have a limited liability partnership just to save on the compliance cost. And other important aspect is taxations. But from income tax perspective, it would become somewhat neutral after a point of time, whether you have a private limited company or LLP. So no doubt, tax factor is one of the important aspects. But there are two other important aspects. Is number one, claiming Startup India benefit and tax exemptions and all. And the second important thing is funding aspects. So the most ideal entity type for any entrepreneurs who is willing to bear some additional compliance costs from the day one is to have a private limited company only, because this is the model which is fit from all the aspects, which takes on all the requirements, whether it is legal requirements, whether it is financial aspects of it, or whether it is anything else. So if someone is ready to incorporate, your first advice, piece of advice should be that it should be registered as a private limited company. If they says no, it is costing too much, or why not anything else, then you can say okay, LLP could also be incorporated. But then these are the things that you should keep in mind before you take a decision. And the most important of them is when are you raising the funds from an external investors. There is no third entity type that you can think of having a partnership firm, whether registered or unregistered, or having a sole proprietorship. But here the second important questions which comes into picture is timing of registration, when to register. Because in most of the cases, for example, if I'm building a mobile application based startup, it would take good amount of time to be ready with the platform. So whether I should start do my company registration from the day one when I'm starting, or I should wait till my platform completion work, the platform development work to get complete, and then I can start. Because in the meantime, once we get the registrations, we would be required to comply with all, as in to file TDS returns, GST returns, and the board meetings and all the requirements. So in that case, the ideal answer would be that if they are entering into any contract with any party, so before you enter into a contract on any basis with any party, you should have the legal entity. So if they are, say, the platform development work is being done by professional developers, as in a third party, we would need to have a contract with them. In that case, it is good to have company registrations from the day one. But if the entrepreneur himself is a coder, then he don't have to enter into any contract. Then he can first complete the work, and once he's ready with the platform and he's actually start hiring employees, start raising funds, taking loans, or whatever contract that he is signing, at that time, at the bare minimum, he should have either LLP or a private limited company in place. So the another important aspects which we need to understand as a consultant. First one was what are the benefits available, and as a startup, recognized startups, and number two, just it is not just sufficient to be a startup registered. The choice of legal entity would also be important, and it would be the most valuable piece of advice that you can give to a potential client. So there is a question that at present, how many startups companies are there? How they are working? What is the rate of success? So in India, I cannot be very sure about what is the exact number of startups which are operating, but the number of startups which are registered, as in the startups which are having an account on Startup India portal, the number is roughly around 80,000. 80,000 is the number which are registered on Startup India portal. But the recognized startups, the startups which got recognized by DIPP, the number is somewhere around 16,000. So then there could be a reason, as in not all people who are creating an account would be eligible for being recognized. And the second case is that most of the startup might not have applied for DIPP recognition also. So the numbers are not very authentic, I can say. As in government terms, I can say no data available on it. But the important thing is that 80,000 is number, roughly 80,000 is the number of startups which are registered on the Startup India portal. 16 to 20,000 is the number of recognized startups as of now. And if I have to talk about the number of startups which got Section 80 IAC benefit, the number is very less. It is somewhere around 350 to 400, because it is easy to get DIPP registration, but it is very difficult to get approval from the CBDT for tax exemptions. That they would be evaluating your application in very, very detail, which we would be talking about in the later slide. Rate of success, again, the general understanding among the startup community that more than 90% of the startup fail, either because of backing of their founding team, or lacking of fund available, or executions were not good. And even in India, the statistics say the same thing, that 90% of the startups are failing only. But now the things are improving over the period. We have covered the choice of legal entity. Moving to the next and the important aspects, that apart from having the basic legal entity registration, the other legal registration that we would be requiring is, of course, basic, like PAN 10 GST registration is necessary, which is for any business. But having regulatory approval in place and something where you can help, like getting approval from the RBI for fintech startup, or getting approval from FSSI for the food registration. So wherever required, you can help help the startup clients to get these regulatory approvals and another areas of practice for your potential client. Now, going a bit deeper into the legal aspects of the service, right? I am not covering remember the BLFT, the business opportunity that I mentioned in the beginning, that business consulting service or legal services or financial services or tax services. I am going in the same flow. If you have noticed, business services, I have not got too much into detail that how to make the pitch deck and all, because that is again a separate seminar topic. Now I am talking about the legal services first, where I talked about the IPP registration. Second is choice of legal entity. Number three is other regulatory approvals which are required. And number four is the another and the most important aspect of startups, which is usually missed and not advised by the chartered accountants unless you are in startup practice area. So the document is called having a co-founder agreement in place. What happens that in most of the cases, the people who are starting any startup are either family members or friends or close relatives or the people from the same network, as in someone who have been knowing for a long time. So in that case, and of course they are not from the legal background, so they don't know the nitty gritties of law and the potential conflict which might arise if they don't have the things in place well documented, right? So they would not have any mutual agreement between them except registering the company. For example, when they are registering the company, they would of course be having 50-50 shareholding, that who will be having what equity percentage and all. These are the basic things which would get automatically covered. But the another important aspects about the roles and responsibilities of each founders, they are not discussed by the founders because they are like friends only. They would think that okay, let's start now. We'll think of this once we are successful. But once they are successful, there arises disputes between the founders, and then the startup becomes unsuccessful. They fail because one of the member would be living and all. So there are a few important questions which needs to be addressed in a separate agreement between the founders of any startup. And the important questions are the number one thing, that who are the founders, their background and all. Second is what is the percentage of their stake in company, who is eligible to what. And that would be depending upon what is the role of roles and responsibility of each person, right? For example, I'm starting a startup with a friend who would be working on it full time. It was his idea. I just helping him. Then my role would not be, I would mostly not be involved in the regular operation of it. Then accordingly, that roles and responsibility needs to be clearly defined and very very clearly defined to avoid future conflict. So, and this is something which needs to be documented in the co-founder agreement. Promoters agreement is the other term which is usually used. Percentage of equity, why that percentage, as in what is the corresponding role, responsibilities and designations to be used by each co-founder. Then what is the vesting conditions? So what happens that, for example, you and me, we two are starting a company today in a business. So let's say we are starting a professional consulting firm which would be providing services to all the startups. So on the day one, we register a company, we divide our equity 50-50. Now, after 6 months, I realize that I don't enjoy working with you. And for that reason, I resign. The question is that, okay, I'll not be involved in the management from now on. So I don't deserve any remuneration if I was getting other way. But the another important aspect, what would happen to my equity? Because in the 6 months time, it is definitely not a big hit. So can I sell my equity to someone else, or can I continue to retain my equity even though I'm not working on it? So that is a big question mark. That what would happen if a founder leaves the company in in immediate next years after the incorporation? So what would happen to equity? That is the reason we need to put a vesting clause in our co-founder agreement, that okay, on the day one when we are registering the company, both the founders, like assume say, divide the equity in 50-50, but it does not mean that they are entitled to sell the equity or to enjoy all the rights on the equity from the day one. The vesting condition would say that for the first year or for the second year, no founder is having any kind of right over the equity, as they cannot dispose of, they cannot sell, they cannot transfer it. For the first 2 years, there is a cooling off period. Nobody is entitled. So if you leave the company within 2 years, you're not entitled to any shareholding per se. But if you leave the company after say 2 years, or the cooling after the 2 years ka cooling period, what you can put that after 2 years, each partner, each shareholder would be getting some percentage of equity over the period of time. As in, you can make a schedule. For example, say for after 2 years, for the next 3 years, you would be getting the proportionate equity. You would become entitled to the proportionate equity for the next 36 months. So each extra month that I spend with the company after 2 years, I get eligible to 1 by 36 portion of my equity. So in that way, it would help the promoters to retain the founding team for a longer period. And if they goes by any chance, at least their equity is safe. It would remain with the company and the existing founder. It would not go to any other person. So vesting clause is not vesting condition is something which is usually referred to in the co-founder agreement, that how the equity would be vesting to the founders over the period of time. And if someone is leaving, then what would happen? Can the existing founders, the other remaining founders, can buy it? And if yes, at what price? All the things needs to be discussed. The templates for co-founder agreement are very easily available everywhere on the internet, on the Startup India portal also. We can download. And if you want, I can definitely email to your email ID also after the session. And this is something that we needs to be covered when you are advising a startup client, that advise them to have a co-founder agreement in place. And these are the tough talks to be made, which they would not be doing. And as a consultant, it is your role to advise them that please discuss and document these things at the day one itself. Let's not wait till the startup success become a successful startup, or if it fails. Let's avoid the future conflict and solve and document all the things today only. Then what is the commitment of, as in the other important aspects apart from roles and responsibilities, that what if one of the member is not performing? Can the existing founder throw some any team member out of the team? And other circumstances where employee could be removed, who would be taking the decisions, how the business would be done, any important aspects related to it, as in the 12 points which are mentioned. All the important and tough discussion has to be documented in the form of the co-founder agreement itself. So do advise your clients to have a co-founder agreement in place. Do go through the templates which is available on internet, that what things are documented and how they are documented. I have already covered the slide, IPR protection, so patent and trademark. For trademark, we have 50% concession on application fee, along with a list of trademark facilitator available on portal. And for the patent also, we get 80% rebate on the legal fees and fast track examination, along with patent facilitator details available on the Startup India portal. And that is the most important thing was that is the another area that you need to take care when consulting a startup client. Advise them to file trademark at a suitable time, at a relevant time, and advise them to file a patent if they're eligible. And another important aspect, before you decide the name of company, do tell them to check for the trademark infringement, as in whatever name that they're deciding for the company, it should be available. And not only the name, but domain should also be available. This is something that you should advise your clients. So now, after having discussed the legal aspects of the startup funding, the startup working, we can move on to the other legal considerations related to funding. That how, as in, what are the legal aspects relevant to the funding of startups? So the process, if I have to say that today I am a startup founder, I approach a potential investors for saying that okay, I am working on this project and for this I need fund, and I'm okay to give you, say, let's assume after the valuations that I'm okay to give you 10% equity for raising 50 lakhs rupees from you. And assuming that okay, the investor was convinced with my idea about the execution plan and all, and he's ready to invest. So how the process would be from now on? So the first thing is that both the investors and startup would be entering into a term sheet, which means that basic document summarizing the understanding of both the parties, that okay, this is the startup for which I'm raising the funds, and these are the terms of the investment proposal to which both the parties are agreeing. So the first document to be signed between an investor and this is term sheet. Again, it's a standard document. Templates are easily available at all the places. So term sheet needs to be signed between the investors and the entrepreneurs, the startup guys. And then after this, we would start with the actual allotment work, right? So for example, we agreed that okay, 10% equity for 50 lakhs. Now for that 10% equity, we would need to first get the funds, share capital in the account, start the process of private placement, and then allot them the shares. So and then have an investment agreement if you need. So the way we made an co-founder agreement, same way we can have a investor agreement where we would be documenting the understanding between and expectations, roles, and responsibilities of investors and co-founders. So that is all the aspects that we need to take care. The another important aspect is angel tax. That what if the issue price of shares is more than the fair value? What would happen? Whether it is taxable or not? We would be covering that part along with our tax-related discussions. Moving on to the next part, that startup related. So the next important aspect that we need to cover is tax benefits, ATIAC, 5627B, angel tax, and then ESOP taxations. But before that, I would like to address the questions that you asked in the break time, that how the startups are valued. So I would say that the value of startup is always in the eyes of the entrepreneurs and investors. So as a entrepreneur, I would have a range of comfort that how much equity I am ready to dilute to raise a particular amount of fund. For example, if I am working on a startup for which I just need 50 lakhs rupees. And I believe that 50 lakhs is not at all a substantial amount, having regard to the potential of that idea and the amount of funds that I would be requiring over a period of time. I would want not to dilute more than say 5% or 10% equity at that point of time. So I would say that, okay, I'm ready to give 10% equity for 50 lakhs rupees, which means my value of startup is 5 crore rupees. Now, or on this other hand, investor would want to have maximum as much as possible equity percentage. So he would say, I am ready to give you 50 lakhs, but I would ask for 25% equity, and which takes the valuation to 2 crore rupees. So it is always, as in there could be no standard way to value the company, especially startups, that okay, this is the price that which the business should actually be done. But there is some academic concept, as in the DCF method and the NAV method, which are usually used to value any startups. Those are definitely taken into care for the legal purpose. So, as in for private placement, you need a valuation report from a registered valuer. There, the proper valuation would be done. For example, you will be we usually prepare projections for next 5 years of the startup, and then those 5 years projections are discounted with free cash flows, and then we comes to a value. But how much that value has to come, as a professional colleague, I can say that value is always in our control, in our hand, how much value we need to give them, and that would always be judged and biased by the deal figures, right? As in how much value the investor is needing, how much value the entrepreneurs is leading. Accordingly, the cash flows would be adjusted. Accordingly, the discount rate would be adjusted, and the valuation amount would be computed. So I hope that is the most practical answer that I can give for this. Are you not able to see my screen? I hope that I'm sharing my screen, right?
Sir, you are
It is
able
up.
to see it.
You are able to see, right? Okay.
Sir.
Okay, perfect. So there is a question that in what situation issue of CCPS or CD are suitable? So in the initial round, when usually the angel investors or the people from your family network and all, they would never insist for equity. When CCPS or CCDs would be coming into pictures is when you get an angel investor on board. Sorry, venture capital firm on board. So they are, in most of the cases, they are very much comfortable to give you CCDs in first, as in their discussion would always start from CCD first. That okay, we are ready to give you funds, but it would be in the form of CCDs. Then, if not, you're not okay with CCDs, then they would go to CCPS, and if not CCPS, it is they would be okay for equity shares. So there is no right thing I can say that okay, this is as in this would be the right time for CCPS or CCDs. It is definitely depending upon the negotiating power of the VC firm and the startup. How strong you are in the negotiation table is something that would decide that whether you will be getting money for equity shares or CCDs or CCPS. Now, coming to the important aspects is tax benefits. So, what all income tax benefits are eligible to the startups? First is the tax holiday that we will be discussing, which is under Section 80 IAC of Income Tax Act. Number two is angel tax related benefits, and number three is ESOP related benefits, and number four is capital gain. So, first, talking about tax exemptions. So, Section 80 IAC of the Income Tax Act says that the eligible startups, now I'll come to the point what is eligible startups, but all the eligible startups are eligible for 100% deduction of their business income for a period of 3 years in first 10 years. So to put it very simple, that any eligible startup can claim tax holiday for 3 years out of first 10 years. So it could be first, second, third year, or fourth, fifth, sixth year, or sixth, seventh, eighth year. It could be any years, but the 3 years has to be consecutive. So once you start taking the benefit, then you can't have a break in between. This 3 years has to be consecutive years, right? And who is eligible for this benefit? So a company, a startup which is registered as a company or LLP is the only eligible entity type. So remember the moment when I said that okay, no doubt that DIPP allows you to have three entity types: company, LLP, and registered partnership firm. But tax exemption is not allowed if you're a registered partnership firm, and that is the reason either you need to have a company or LLP to get all the benefits of the startups. So having a company and LLP is must. That company and LLP must be registered after 1st April 2016, as in the date from which the section was introduced in the Income Tax Act. till 31st March 21 is the current date, and this date would definitely be extended in the next budget. But for now, as in the existing provisions of income tax law says that a company or LLP which was incorporated after 1st April 2016 till 31st March 21 and whose turnover does not exceed 25 crore rupees in the year in which you are aiming to claim the deductions, and you have certification of eligible business, as in after we get the DIPP registrations, there is a separate application to be made through the platform itself, as in through the Startup India portal itself, making application for ATIAC, where they would be asking you again a bit detail about your revenue sources, what your startup exactly is, and they would be evaluating whether to give you tax holiday or not. And it is difficult to get tax holiday. Uh, and then basis that application, processing of that application, they would be issuing a certificate, and that certificate is from the interministerial board, which includes people from the commerce ministry as well as the finance ministry, the tax people. So the interministerial board people would give you a certificate, and if you get the certificate, you can claim tax holiday for 3 consecutive years. Now the important question which comes here is which 3 years to claim, whether it should be first, second, or third, or it should be eighth, ninth, or 10th. So two things we need to keep in mind before we advise someone for tax holiday. Number one, when do they expect to cross the turnover of 25 crore rupees? Whether it would be in the year one itself, or it would be from the year fifth, sixth, or seventh. Right. So the first thing that we need to take care is that when do they expect that turnover would cross 25 crore rupees? And the second, that maximum period is 10 years. We need to claim the benefit within 10 years. So, for example, we have 10 years in which we can claim benefit for 3 years, and they're expecting that we would be reaching the turnover from of 25 crore rupees in, say, somewhere around seventh year. So before that, we need to claim benefit. We should ensure that we are taking benefit for all the 3 years so that we can save taxes. So in the seventh year, if I am expecting 25 crore rupees turnover, then I would advise that, okay, let's take the benefit of the tax holiday in the fourth, fifth, and sixth year, because from the seventh year onwards, I'll not be eligible to take benefit. Or there could be a startup whose turnover would cross 25 crore rupees in the first year itself, then he's not eligible to take the benefit. Or it could be possible that he's crossing this, he's about to, or he's expecting to get this turnover in the second or third year. Then it is advisable that at the time of incorporation itself, we make the application and then we claim the benefits. The other practical approach to doing this, that you at the time of registration, after the incorporation of company, after you get the DIPP registration, you make the application to interministerial board for this ATIAC certificate, so that once you have the certificate, it would be valid for the entire 10 years, as in if you're fulfilling the conditions, you are eligible to take the benefits. So once you get the application, you can see in the which year you are getting the threshold criteria met, and you can claim the benefits accordingly. And the important point here was the timing is also important, when to apply for ATIAC benefit and when to claim the tax holiday benefit. Who is eligible? A company or LLP incorporated after 1st April 2016, turnover is not exceeding 25 crore rupees. Tax benefit is available for 3 years, 3 consecutive years out of first 10 years. But eligible business, the another important thing. So eligible startup, if you see the first point, there are two terms which are highlighted, which are bold: eligible startups and eligible business. I've talked about what is eligible startups in the second point, which is there on the screen. Now talking about the eligible business, which is the third point, that eligible business means eligible startup, as in, of course, you have to fulfill the conditions mentioned in the point two, but which is engaged in innovation, deployment, development, or improvement of any product, process, or service, or a scalable business model with high potential of employment generation and wealth creation. So I can say this condition is similar, as in the same as what the conditions which were there for the IPP registrations. The only additional condition that an unregistered partnership firm is not eligible. Turnover for DIPP registration is 100 crore rupees, but for tax benefit is 25 crore rupees. There, the benefit, it is just said that you will be able to claim startup benefit for 10 years, but here the timing is also important. The year of incorporation is also important. It has to be after 1/4/2016, and company on LLP, it has to be right, and then you need to have the certificate for ATIAC section. Now, the another important condition is that it should be a new business. It should not be a splitting up of reconstruction of any business. And the next important, that second-hand plant and machinery which was earlier used in India should not be more than 25% of the block value. So in a way, they are saying that you need to be a new business, with new plant and machinery, but it's okay to have second-hand machinery on which was earlier used in India up to 25% of the block value, your total plant and machinery. So these are the basic conditions and the benefits which are available for all the startups which are recognized by DIPP. And then after DIPP recognitions, you can make application to the Interministerial Board through the Startup India portal itself. And if you get the exemption, the ATIAC certificate, you can claim this tax holiday for 3 years, 3 consecutive years out of first 10 years. Any question on ATIAC? If yes, then please ask.
Respect of the income tax registration, you specifically mentioned that 25% is the value of the old plant and machinery.
Yes.
Is it the same condition for DIPP registration also?
Sir, no, sir. That's an additional condition for Section 80IC benefits only. That for DIPP there is no conditions for having old or new plant and machinery. But if you want to claim tax holiday, then second-hand plant and machinery should not be more than 25% of block value. This is only for tax benefits only.
But in DIPP registration, it was told that it should be a new business. And
Right, sir.
New means whether it can have second-hand machinery. Sir?
Yes, sir. So, right, as in, see, as in, there seems to be a confusion that new business versus second-hand plant and machinery. So, for example, I am starting a fintech business from day one, for which I want to buy second-hand plant computers and printers and all those things, right? So, I was not in the same business earlier. So if I was not in the same business, my business is new, it is not a reconstructed business or it is not a split up result. I fulfill the conditions for both the things, for the IPP registrations also and for the ATIAC. But when it comes to ATIAC, I need to check that whatever be my total plant and machinery, the second-hand plant and machinery should not be more than 25%. So it is as in what is important that just having second-hand plant and machinery which was not used by me in the past, or I was not in the same business earlier, it is okay to have that. As in, that would not affect your DIPP registration conditions. It is very much possible that I am starting a food processing unit today, where I'll be making all the spices and bakery products and all those things. I want to buy a second-hand plant and machinery. That is okay. DIPP registration is eligible, but we need to check whether I'll be eligible for tax benefit or not. I hope I cleared your question, right?
Purchase of second-hand machinery from abroad is allowed, no? There is no question of percentage
Yes,
or restriction.
Right. Yes, sir. So the fifth point, second-hand plant and machinery, which was earlier used in India. So in India, I think the simple benefit is that if the other person has claimed depreciation on that, already claimed depreciation, then that is not allowed because that would result into tax loss. Yeah.
And similarly, the fourth point says it should not be by method of splitting up or reconstruction of the existing business. Can it be by development of an existing business?
No, sir. So development of the basic condition it has to be a new business.
Reconstruction. It is not splitting up or it is not reconstruction. Say I have got about 25,000 persons employed. Say I'm in the IT industry. I have got so much of computers. I would like to further develop further some other application in the same company itself. So can it be termed as eligible for this IT?
No, sir. The criteria is that it has to be a new business only if you were already having a business which was in existence prior to 1/4/2016. Then the condition is not, as in we do not fulfill the condition here. As in starting from scratch. So the intention of the government, if we see as in the purposive test, which is there in the legal interpretations. So the intention of the government is to promote first-time entrepreneurs. So if we were already in the business and we are seasoned business, we are doing it for the long time, then the benefit is not available.
And how do they judge the employment potential?
As in, depend on how well we describe. As in, it is something that we need to tell them. When we file the application, there is that how do you justify that you are into a scalable business model, which employment opportunity?
Should we submit any other certificate for that or any any authorization for that or anything like that, or simply self-certification will do?
Self-certification. Yes, only self-certification is required that this is the business that I'm working on, and it has potential to employ, say, 1,000 people in this year and then 2,000 people in the next year. That is sufficient.
In case of default in not doing so, any penalty or anything like that? I'm not able to do that generation of employment potential in the next year or in the year in which I promised. Anything?
No, right. A very valid question. But, sir, the important point here is that for now, I'm just taking a registration. I'm not claiming the benefit. So, in the year in which I am claiming the benefit, if there was no employment, actual employment that I gave, right? As in the last year itself, there was the same number of employees. In this year also, there is the same and very reasonable number, say 150 employees. Then there is no benefit as such. As in, then there would be a question that whether I am actually creating or generating employment or not. But if that is not the case, at the time of registrations, it is completely based on self-certification. That if you feel that, okay, I'll be able to give employment, then you can take the registrations. But whether you want to claim benefit or not, that is secondary. That is our judgment at the after having regard to the actual scene for that year. That how much.
So a question may arise at the time when I'm claiming the benefit. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
That's the thing, because the certification is done by us and nobody knows what is going to happen in the future immediately. Say, after all, it's a long period of 10 years within which I should say that I give an employment potential for so many persons. Of course, everybody will start a business only with a fond hope that they will improve further and further.
Right.
Anyway, it's a nice idea that you gave, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. So moving on to the next part is the angel tech, much hyped among the entire tech fraternity as well as the startup fraternity as well. That what would happen that in most of the cases, the startup actual value of startup would be much less. For example, I started working today. I have an idea and I want to build that platform, and for that I'm raising funds. Definitely, I'll not be raising funds at the face value. It would be at some value. For example, say 10 rupees of shares, I'm raising funds at 1,000 rupees per share. The question would arise whether the 1,000 rupees is the actual fair value or not. The valuation would, of course, depend. As in, the investor might value it differently. The entrepreneur might come at some different value, and the tax authorities might come at the third value, right? So the question would arise that what if the tax authority, as in the actual issue price at which we are issuing the shares, the startup company is issuing the share, is more than the fair value of the shares. So section 5627B, which talks about that whenever a company is a closely held company is issuing shares to a resident shareholder, the excess of issue price over the fair value of the shares is to be taxed as income from other source. And this principle, this law was earlier impacting all the startups, because this is very common that in most of the cases, when the startups are raising funds, especially at the pre-seed round or seed round, the fair value would be much lesser than the actual issue price at which they are issuing the shares. So if they have to pay tax on it, then it is definitely not not encouraging entrepreneurship in India in any way. And that is the reason that exemption was given to eligible startups which has DPIIT recognitions. So the simple law here that in the general case, whenever a closely held company is issuing shares to a resident shareholder, and if the issue price is more than the fair value of the share, as in the first condition is that the share has to be issued at more than face value, as in at a premium, and the issue price is more than the fair value of the shares, then the excess of fair value over the excess of issue price over the fair value is to be taxed as income from other source. For example, face value of the share is 10 rupees. The fair value determined as per the proper rules which are prescribed for it is 100 rupees, but my actual issue price is 500 rupees. Then this law says, 5627B says that the 500 rupees, which is the issue price, minus 100 rupees, which is the fair value of it, the excess 400 rupees would be treated as income from other source in the hands of company. So if that would have been the case, it would be very difficult for the startups to raise funds at a good price. So for that, to overcome that problem, government has gave exemptions to all the startups, and it simply says that this provision would not apply if it is a DPIIT recognized startup and the amount of paid share capital and share premium of that startup after the issue or proposed issue of the share does not exceed 25 crore rupees. As in for the small startups who are raising funds up to 25 crore rupees, which includes both the share premium and share capital, the provisions of angel tax, as in the provisions of section 5627B, does not apply. So you can issue shares at whatever price that the investors is okay with and the entrepreneurs are okay with. So this is a major relief which has actually helped the startups to raise funds at a good amount. But now the next question of it, how do we avail this exemption? Do we need to take any separate certification of it, or it is by default by it is linked with ATIAC or DPIIT? So the answer to this is that once we get DPIIT registrations, DPIIT recognitions, after that there is just one page declaration that we need to file on the Startup India portal itself, where we would be saying that my share capital is not more than 25 crore rupees and I'm issuing shares to closely held companies. So one simple page declaration, signed declaration to be uploaded and to be submitted without any application fee. And 99.99% cases, we do get exemption for angel tax if you already have DPIIT recognitions. So this is how we need to claim the benefit for angel tax. Get the DPIIT registration first if you are getting, if you are issuing shares, as in for your startup client is issuing shares to a resident shareholder, make sure that we have angel tax exemption in hand, otherwise it would become taxable in the hand of company. And the process for getting the angel tax exemptions I have already told. It is not linked with ATIAC in any case, it is linked with DPIIT recognitions. There is a question that is there any exclusion of turnover? There is no legal definition given in this particular section. So whatever be the total turnover, has, as in to the best of my knowledge, it would be included in this part. There is no legal definition being given of turnover for Section 80 IEC purpose to compute the turnover threshold of 25 crore rupees. Moving on to
we can take it that it is inclusive of GST and other things also.
no, I think the same principle that we apply for computing turnover for all the purpose, whether it is for the tax audit purpose and all, the same principle would apply. So the
I think for other purposes also GST is included. Even a court decision is there that GST is to be in the even in the recent tax collected at source. They say GST is to be included in the receipts for the purpose of determining this 10 crores. So automatically then we should take it that GST should be included here also.
Right. Yes. And right. So no further questions. So moving on to the next part of it, ESOP taxation. So ESOP taxation, the first important aspect that we need to understand here, that what used to happen prior to budget 2020, as in this provision has came into from this budget only, Finance Act 2020, it amended the provisions related to taxation of ESOP in case of startup employees. And it is a very usual practice for the startups to issue ESOP to their key employees to retain them, because no startup can afford to pay them at the as per the industry standard. So, for example, I want to build a tech startup and I'm not from a tech background. I would need to hire someone from someone as a CTO. Now, a CTO would be charging a remuneration in lakhs, which I can't afford to pay. So, the better idea is to give them some equity in the form of ESOP. So, what used to happen prior to this amendment by Finance Act 2020, that the taxation of ESOP was divided into two parts: the tax on perquisite as income from salary at the time of exercise, and then capital gain, as in the difference of fair value, as in whatever be the perquisite I can say was taxed at the time when I exercise the option, exercise the ESOP, and then thereafter when I sell, then it was again taxed. But now this thing has been changed so that there is no burden on it, as in at the time when I'm exercising, any employee is exercising the ESOP, there is no actual cash flow to his pocket. I'm just taking the shares. So to avoid and to delay the tax burden at that time, there is an amendment of from this budget itself, and the amendment says that I'm just reading the third point, that in case of eligible startups which are referred to in section 80 IAC, so which means that this benefit is linked with startups which are eligible for section 80 IAC, ESOP offered to its employees are taxable, and TDS on such perquisite is deductible on within 40 days. So the simple case is that the tax burden for employees have been delayed So now it is not taxable at the time of exercise, but it would be taxable at the time after the expiry of 48 months from the end of relevant AY in which it was exercised, or from the date of sale of such specified security or sweat equity shares by the SSE, as in by the employee, or from the date when employee ceases to be in employment. So, as in when initially the tax burden prior to this amendment was in the year of exercise of options, now it has been delayed by a maximum period of 4 years. But before that, if any employee is ceasing, is resigning from his employment, is discontinuing his employment, or if he is transferring that shares, then he would need to pay in that year. So this is a benefit in terms of that. Let's tax the income in the year in which there is an actual tax flow, but the maximum delay is for 48 months, not beyond that. And moving on to the other part, so there are two things. Two more important, section 54 GB. It's a very general that if you're starting a startup, at that time, if you're needing funds, you can sell your residential house or a residential plot of land and invest that the amount of net consideration into the startup capital, and you get the exemptions. I'm not going into detail because it's a very basic provisions. And the another important aspect is section 79 about the carry forward and set off of losses. So the basic principle of Section 79 says that if you want to set off the losses, carry forward and set off the losses, at least 51% of the shareholding, or I can say the voting power, has to be in the hands of same person in the year, in as in the shareholding of the year in which you are claiming set off of the losses, as compared to the shareholding in the year in which the loss one occurred. It has to be same people who are holding at least 51% voting power in the both years. But now it is not possible in most of the cases of startup that they would be the same people, as in as the startup grows to become unicorn, the percentage of equity of the main founders, the main promoters, do go beyond 51%. So, for example, if you have to think about the equity percentage of Vijay Shekhar Sharma in Paytm, or equity of Ravichandran Baiju in Byju's, it is definitely not 51%, but at this time of incorporation, they were definitely having 51%. So the thing is that if we keep this provision applicable for startups, it would be an injustice because it would create a hurdle for them to raise funds also. And most of the startups do occur losses in the initial year. So if this provision is kept open for startups, they would not be able to take set off of the losses of initial years. So for this, they came up with the provision that hello, yeah. So they came up with the provision that such for shareholders, the same people, as in they would be the same people should be there on the board. So that is as in the individual, instead of percentage, if it is the same people, they are okay to take off the benefit. Hello, I think there is some network issue from my side.
Hello.
Yeah, am I audible? As in it's raining heavily, so I feel there is some network issue from my side.
Audible, sir. Your
Okay.
You can continue, sir.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So that was the
Hello, sir.
last part. Yeah.
Sir, to claim this the income tax benefits,
Mhm.
is it enough if we register under DIPP, or we should get registered under income tax also?
As you see now, because we have discussed almost all the tax benefits, also there is uh, nothing much to discuss about after this. So what I can actually help you with a process how to go about it. So for example, there is a startup coming to me who wants my help with all the legal aspects of it. So the actual flow would be that number one, we do the legal entity registrations, like registering a company or LLP, whatever be the suitable. After that, of course, with the company and LLP would be getting PAN card, PAN card, and GST related GST if applicable. So those registrations taken care. Post that, I can apply for DIPP. As in the first thing, I would create an account on Startup India portal. Once I create the account, the next step would be to apply for DIPP recognitions. Once I get the DIPP recognitions, I would have an option whether I want to take 80 IAC certificate at that moment, or if I want to take it later on, I can definitely do that. So as in once we have got the DIPP registration, then only you become eligible for Section 80 IAC benefits also, as well as for angel tax exemptions also. So for angel tax, there is one simple one-pager form, more like a declaration, which needs to be submitted through Startup India portal only, and which could be done anytime, and which is auto approved in most of the cases. I mean, there won't be any rejections for angel tax exemptions if you already have a DIPP registrations. And for 80 IAC, there is a altogether different set of documents. As in, again, the application is to be made through Startup India portal only, but a detailed application form again to be filled, which would have the startup related detail, how you are innovative, how you are new, and all. Because this time the application would be going to mainly to the tax people, right, to the interministerial board, and they do not have any prior database about you. So that is the reason we again need to file a detailed application form, and then the application would be evaluated by them. And once we get the certificate, then we can claim benefit of Section 80 IAC. So the process wise, number one, company registration. Number two, DIPP registration. Number three is going for 80 IAC at the same time, or we can delay as per our own choice. And whenever we are raising funds, just before that, we can definitely apply for angel tax exemptions. So that is a basic flow when it comes to startups. I hope I answered your question, sir.
Angel tax exemption is a separate registration, sir?
It's not a separate registrations, but there is a formality to be completed because a declaration, right? So there is a threshold that I mentioned, 25 crore rupees for share capital and share premium.
Yes.
So one simple one-pager declaration that we need to submit through the Startup India portal only, and so in a way we can consider it's a separate application, but it's not an application per se, as in something that we count separately and bills separately to the client, because it's a simple one-pager declaration which needs to be uploaded. That's it.
Yes, sir.
But definitely it's a different step, as in after DIPP we need to do that. It's not an automatic benefit that we get.
Sir, for that ESOP and Section 79 benefits, is DIPP registration is enough?
Yeah,
Suppose if the client is
yes. So we don't need any other registration for that.
only for 80 IAC, we must get separate registration, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Then perfect. I think I have concluded my presentations. If you have any questions about any point that we discussed during our presentations, you are free to ask.
Members, any other questions we can ask the speaker? I think he
like the water flowing from Niagara top. I can say we could hear the words flowing through the mouths of Mr. Hardia so nicely, so instructively, and so excellently that we do not have much of questions to ask. And further, this part of the area is not for this innovative business or anything like that. I think mostly we are having only these developmental businesses there. A person who is having a knitting unit may like to go for further knitting units or further stitching units or further apparel manufacturing units or something like that. But they are not eligible because they are not innovative as such. How can you call a product as innovative? Suppose if I'm going for apparel manufacturing, which is entirely different type of manufacturing apparel, then can I say it is innovative?
It would not be innovative as such unless we are using a new technology and all. As in, anything would not become innovative or scalable by default. We would always need to justify to the authorities that why it is different or why it is unique and why we deserve the startup related benefits. So maybe innovative would be difficult to prove here. Sorry to interrupt. Please.
No. Just like in information technology units, when you are developing applications and other things, if you are going for a different type of application, you can say that it is innovative because you are finding something, you are doing something entirely different. Like that, in our own type of knitting, if you go for different type of knitting which is not hitherto adopted by us, can you say it is innovative when you are going for something else?
No, it would be very difficult to justify in that case, specifically for the startup related benefit, because the intention of the government is not to give benefits to the developing units, but to the first timers and specifically people who are coming up with new technologies and starting from scratch. So, as in, no doubt, all the businesses do grow and they do scale their operations over the period of time, but that doesn't make them eligible for startup benefits. Yes, sir. I hope we are good to conclude the session now.
I think even otherwise, even if it is not innovative, I think we can use the benefits or what you told. It's a social media in the startup website. Those resources, I think our young persons can utilize.
100%. These are really good courses. As in, one of the entrepreneurship course is by Ronnie Screwvala, who is now the main leading investor of Upgrade, right? And he's a very experienced entrepreneur. So, as in to having access to his courses, and that too for free, it's a really amazing things. And there are other templates available on all the templates that any startup, whether it's a contract letter with employees or anybody, those are amazing resources. Sorry, sir.
We will be able to know what other peoples are doing in this area. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Members, any other questions? Venkatamani, sir, where are any other questions, sir?
Of course, I think almost the entire lecture itself was clarificatory. I mean, avoiding us in raising any questions. It is excellent. Anyway, we will again think over what he said, and then if we find any questions, I think we will learn again approaching for clarification.
No problem, sir. All the time available. Thank you, sir.